Hi, superheroes! I'm Pink Phoenix, coming to you from Purdue University College of Veterinary Medicine's League of Vetahumans. Today, our special guest on Vetahumans Live is Valkyrie. Thanks for being on the show, Valkyrie.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be excellent. To get started, can you tell us your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a poultry veterinarian in the Carolinas. I'm also the co-founder of Pawsabilities Vet Med, which is a nonprofit that looks to diversify the vet med profession. And I have a veterinary and a PhD degrees from the University of Georgia.
Absolutely awesome. You use your superpowers in so many different ways, and I have a ton of questions, but I really want to start by talking about Pawsabilities Vet Med because it's amazing, and everything that you have accomplished, I'm just in awe. So tell us more. How long has Pawsabilities been going on, and how did it come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pawsabilities has been around for 2 years officially. We received our 501c3 nonprofit status 2 years ago in August, and since then we have really expanded. We started with an idea of how do we highlight the diversity that is existing in the profession and allow people to see themselves within veterinary medicine, and it evolved into a network, online network that is free of cost for individuals from underrepresented groups. So our nonprofit has a platform where individuals can find peers and can find mentors. We have professional development resources. Yeah, we're really, really excited.
It is just an incredible platform. You should be so proud. So can you tell our listeners why mentorship is so important for our profession?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was fortunate enough to grow up with a veterinarian as a mother. And so I saw myself in the profession all my life. I never had any thought that I couldn't be a veterinarian, because growing up in the Dominican Republic, everybody looked like me. And my mom and my quote unquote uncles, so my childhood and fake aunt and uncles that were all veterinarians, all looked like me, all were very encouraging. So when I moved to the US in high school, I was very fortunate as well to have mentors that looked like me. I worked at a pet shop in the Bronx and at a small animal clinic in Manhattan. And at both of those, I worked with veterinarians and technicians that were people of color that looked like me. Then going to Cornell University as an undergraduate, I started seeing less and less people that looked like me. And I think one of the things that really helped me remain on this path and figure out where I needed to go, because nobody in my family really knew about, the application process in the US, and that you needed to do like an undergrad degree and then do a graduate degree and all of these other things. My mentors really guided me through the entire process. So they were the people that were there for me, reading my essays, making sure that I was taking the classes that I needed to, that I was getting my volunteer hours, that I had letters of recommendation, and even the ones that weren't directly in veterinary medicine were there for me when I needed them, and guided me through being developing into the professional that I am today. Because having my parents live outside of the country, I didn't have them as close as I could have.
I love it. And mentorship, it's been such an important part of my life. I still use my mentors constantly. So I feel very fortunate that I have a team around me, and it sounds like you have an awesome team around you.
Absolutely. Mentors are so important to all of us, not just being able to see ourselves in this profession, but have somebody that you can lean on and rely on for advice, whether that is, directly related to your professional path or maybe some in your personal life. They've been crucial to me.
Absolutely. So we spoke a while ago, and you were telling me all about Pawsabilities Vet Med and all the moving parts, and I was just floored. I was so impressed. Can you tell our listeners a little more about what goes into starting an initiative like Pawsabilities Vet Med? Like, what are all the parts? Can you tell all your team members and their superpowers?
Yeah. Oh, it's a bit of a story. I'll try to keep it brief, but basically, as I continued to see less and less of me within the profession, I started wondering what were things that I could do to give back to the profession. And I kept thinking, maybe I can do a podcast or write a book, or what would that look like for our generation? What does accessibility to vet med look like? And as I was going through veterinary school, in my path, I got to see a lot of areas of veterinary medicine. So with my mother, I got to see equine medicine, small ruminants, government work, poultry, small animals. So my mom has done a little bit of everything. And between her and the veterinarians that I was basically raised by, I saw so many areas of vet med. So it was very surprising to me getting to veterinary school and realizing that not all of my peers knew, that like what a poultry veterinarian did or what a lab animal veterinarian did. And so I wanted to bring that in. So I wanted to highlight both the diversity of people within the profession and the diversity of careers. So at one point there was an animal health hackathon, and everybody, as they were like planning their businesses, I was like, okay, how do I turn this into a business, right? Like, what is even a business? And I proposed the idea of I want to start something to diversify vet med. I'm thinking maybe an app, maybe something. And I was completely ready to be shut down. And actually my now husband, boyfriend at the time, Seth, and 3 of my friends and classmates from vet school and from my PhD joined my team at the hackathon. And we hashed out the idea of having a platform in which you could come in and look for mentors that had the things that you were looking for, whether that was a career similar to what you wanted to have, somebody that had the degrees you wanted to have, or somebody that looked like you and might have some of those past experiences. And so we went through the small incubator at the University of Georgia, the small business incubator. We did some market research. And at the time I was finishing up my PhD. My husband was also finishing up his. I was going back to my second year of veterinary school. I was getting diagnosed with a chronic condition, and we had gotten some feedback from an advisor, from a mentor of mine, that maybe it wasn't the best initiative and that we should be doing something else. And at that time, it was just frankly too much. So we said, you know what? Let's put it on the back burner for now. So once I graduated in 2020, we moved from Georgia to North Carolina. And at the time, it was very, very obvious that more work needed to be done in that space. It was around the time of George Floyd, and I felt frustrated. And I said, you know what, let's just do it. We're working from home. We have a little bit more time. I don't have to study for stuff anymore. And so I can dedicate some of this energy and frustration. And I reached out to a network. I had already had several mentors and several people in my network that said, when you're ready to start this, just call me. And we did. We called a few people. Dr. Geraldine Henry, Dr. Laura Clark were 2 of the first people that we contacted. And they were immediately like, I'm in. What do I need to do? And so the journey began. We started the application for the nonprofit, the search for ideally an existing platform that we could use as opposed to having to come up with something from scratch. And we just kept, our network just kept growing. It was amazing. I remember putting out a Google form on Facebook and saying, if we were to do something like this, would people be interested? And within, I think, less than a month, we had over 200 people that had said they would be. And that was just within my Facebook. And so,
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we started it, and it has not stopped. We have a board of directors that has an amazing 6 people, and we have an advisory board of about 10 to 15 people. And we have 1 full-time person. My husband and I are the CEO and the COO, and we do what we can on the side. And we have 2 part-time people and are acquiring more volunteers. Right now we have over 300 people on the platform. I think last time we checked, it was from over 30 states or something like that, 30 or 40 states. We have a few different people from like different countries as well, although our main focus is the US. And we are open to veterinarians, technicians, vet students, vet tech students, pre-veterinary individuals, 18 years and older. We are also opening up for hospital managers and for veterinary assistants. We're trying to figure out how to manage the system so we can do that as well. And the groups that we are looking to bring onto the platform include marginalized and underrepresented minority communities, so race, ethnicity, religion, LGBTQIA, disability status, low socioeconomic backgrounds, veteran status. So we have a pretty big array, and our goal is to allow individuals, because we're all intersectional, we all have many different components to who we are, to allow individuals to find people that they can connect with.
Yeah, the platform is just incredible, and all the people that you have behind it, the impact that you are having is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you. It still is kind of terrifying because we were like, oh yeah, this is a thing we'll do on the side and it'll, slowly turn into something. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? Where are all these people coming from?
So let's talk about that. So you started this from scratch and you're managing scale. What skill sets did you have to acquire to make this happen?
It's interesting. There are some skills that I've acquired, and there are some people that we've acquired that have skills, right? So there are different ways to accomplish that. And thankfully, I am the outgoing, extroverted, everybody come hang out with me kind of person. My husband is more on the introverted side, and he's very much like the organized, like step by step, we need to know every detail of of what's happening. And so I think that's played out really well. We joke that I'm the network. And so in veterinary school, actually, when I was at Cornell University as an undergrad, I was fortunate enough to get introduced by somebody to voice. And at that time, I was the only undergraduate student that came to the voice meetings, and they had, created a position for me as the undergraduate student liaison. And I was so excited when I arrived at the University of Georgia and saw that they had a chapter and immediately joined. And since I was there for 7 years, I got to do so much. So I got to join the UGA chapter in 3 different roles in leadership, including president. And then from there, I joined Voice National, and I was vice president, then co-president, then past president. And through that, I got to meet individuals from all over the country in veterinary medicine. I got to meet veterinary students from, 20 some different chapters that Voice has. And I was able to utilize that network when we started Pawsabilities. Some of them were, still in school. Some of those individuals were already out on the workforce. And between that, the partnership that Voice has with Zoetis, which allowed me to meet Drs. Laura Clark and Christine Jenkins, going to the different Diversity Matters symposia throughout, the country, and being the outgoing me that just goes out and randomly talks to strangers. That really helped to expand that network. And that shows now about 2/3 of the individuals on the platform are veterinarians and veterinary students. And so a lot of the work that we're currently doing is to get into the subpopulations that, well, not the sub, but the other populations that we want to have. So more technicians, more pre-vet, etc.
That's excellent. Those relationships are just so important.
Yeah. So I brought in, that like the communication, the networking. Thankfully, Steph brought in a lot of that organization step by step, and then we needed more knowledge as it came to business, to forming a nonprofit, to finding funding. And that's where the rest of our team comes in. We have an excellent program director who she's amazing when it comes to mentorship, to organization, to literally running our entire organization. And then our board, we've expanded. We have, veterinarians and veterinary technicians that are doing all sorts of amazing things. So on our board is individuals from Get Motivated, from empowering vet teams, from Vets of All Colors. Dr. Geraldine Henry has her own business. She has actually two businesses. So we've started expanding onto individuals that are not directly in the profession. So we have somebody that is a lawyer on the board. We have several people that have nonprofit and funding and more community outreach experience. So yeah, we're looking for everything.
Those allied superheroes are so important to the cause.
Absolutely.
So how do our listeners get involved, either as a mentor or to become mentored and find a mentor?
Yeah, so our website is pawsabilitiesvetmed.com. And on there, you can make a profile, take the mandatory training. It's an inclusive mentorship course that has information on being a mentor, on being a mentee, and some basics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we want everybody to be on the same page. And once you do that, we send you information on how to join the platform. And it's free of cost for mentors and mentees.
Excellent. And I'll be sure to put the link in the show notes so we can get even more hundreds of people joining.
Awesome.
So, as an expert in this area, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for someone who would like to serve as a mentor?
Be patient. I think a lot of times we as mentors think that we may know what our mentee should be doing, right? Whether that is based on what we think is best for them or what was best for us, which we think might be best for them. And the reality is that you can give advice and your mentee will have to make the decision of what is best for themselves. And so be patient. And that might, work out just great, or you may have a mentee that comes back and says, I should have listened to you. But remember, this is not a I told you so kind of relationship. This is pure guidance. I would also say help your mentee become more independent. I think a lot of times as people in this profession, we're very empathetic and we want to help, and we want to help all the time. And eventually you just got to let them fly and realize that they may continue to come to you for more advice. It may become more sporadic. Be open to feedback. So mentees should be able to and should feel comfortable giving their mentor feedback, especially with the different groups that we work with. It's important, especially if you're an ally, if you consider yourself an ally, to realize you're still not perfect. And if somebody's coming to you and saying, this is something that could be done to improve our relationship, that person is giving you a chance to meet them and to grow. Absolutely.
On the flip side, if you're being mentored by somebody, what recommendations do you have to get the most out of that relationship?
Communicate. Whether that is through email, through text message, through giving a call, figure out what works for you and your mentor. If something is working, let them know that it is. If something isn't working, let them know that it's not. Oftentimes we think that because is a mentoring relationship, maybe we don't have the say, but the reality is that the relationship has to work for both the mentor and the mentee. And if something happens and is not communicated, that's going to damage the relationship. It takes a long time to build trust and like 3 seconds to break it. So my biggest advice is communicate. Even when you don't need advice on something, sending an email, once a month, once every few months, just saying, hey, everything's going well. Your mentor will appreciate that. Be organized when it comes to the goals that you want to have, the meetings, and that goes back to communication too, right? Like, so if you are not able to prepare for this meeting, communicate that. If you think that you have to move it, or maybe you don't need to meet at this time, just being able to have something prepared for when you're having a meeting with your mentor and be respectful of their time.
Tell us, when was the moment when you knew you had to be a veterinarian?
So I don't know that there was one. I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a veterinarian, even surrounded by all the vets around me. I didn't really think about it Although now I talk to all my friends from childhood and they're all like, oh, we knew you were going to be a vet. I'm like, okay, sure you did. I didn't, but I guess everybody else did. And so when I moved to New York City, I moved in with my aunt and her family, and they didn't have any pets. And I felt very isolated without having any pets in our house. So I started volunteering at a pet shop. And at that time, the LVT that owned it said, you know, like if you really want to, I can put you in touch with a veterinarian and you can start, you know, volunteering with them. And I assume that they had assumed that I was going to be a vet. And at that time, I didn't know I was going to be a vet, but it seemed like that's just the way everybody was sending me. So I started working with Dr. Julie R. Butler in Manhattan, and I really, really enjoyed it. So when I was looking into college applications, I applied for animal sciences program because I figured I liked animals and that would be great. And that's really towards that time when I realized I couldn't not have animals in my life. And I honestly wasn't all that familiar with what other careers I could have that weren't becoming a veterinarian. So that was the path I started on. I started as an animal science major at Cornell. I did a minor in Spanish, but I started doing research at the same time at the vet school and then realized that I loved research. So when I didn't get in my first time applying to vet programs, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? Like, how is this even possible? Partly me having grown up in a country where you could just go sign up for vet school classes. It wasn't this like rigorous thing where you needed to submit all these applications. It was just very different for me. And at that time, I started talking to some of my mentors and they said, okay, maybe you can apply for some of these jobs and these jobs. And I had worked in a parasitology lab for 3 years with Dr. Dwight Bowman and his team. And from there, I got a job in Dr. Gary Whitaker's lab as a technician. And between those two experiences, I just absolutely fell in love with research. So instead of just reapplying to vet programs, I also applied to PhDs and thought that maybe that's the way I wanted to go. So I was accepted to the University of Georgia. At the time, when I finished all my applications, I didn't realize I could do a combined vet PhD program. And so by the time I realized that all the applications were like within a week of being due, and I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to rush my letters of recommendation. I didn't even know what it meant to do a combined program. And so when I got acceptances to the different schools and like went around and did interviews, I continued to ask about the programs and whether I could apply. And I was able to apply to the dual degree at Georgia during my first year of vet school, and ended up doing the combined program there. But even throughout all of that, I wasn't exactly sure where I would fit within veterinary medicine. It wasn't until I started doing my PhD in poultry that I realized that that's what I wanted to do.
I was going to ask how poultry came in.
So I had a few different experiences throughout, and I had worked with my mom a little bit, and I really enjoyed how different her job was, and I wanted to do everything. And I started working at small animal practices and realized that maybe that was not quite what I wanted to do. And I got a lot of experience working with horses at the Equine Research Park, doing a couple of summer internships at dairies, and realized I wanted to do food animal. I didn't know what that would look like, but I knew food animal, things like immunology and endocrinology were really interesting to me. And apparently not everybody thinks that they're so cool. So I figured I might as well try it.
Herd health is the best.
Yes. And so when the opportunity came, I was looking into a couple of different labs and ended up doing my PhD working with Newcastle disease in poultry. And I absolutely just fell in love with poultry medicine.
That's excellent. We parallel a little bit. I didn't know you could do dual degree till I was at my interview at vet school. And then they signed me up for a DVM PhD, and you're tougher than I am. I didn't survive. I couldn't do both programs, so I stepped back and focused on DVM, and then I picked up, after my second year, I picked up for a DVM master's. And that's when I fell in love with pigs.
Pigs are awesome. Yeah, pigs are fantastic. And like the way Georgia does the program, they normally have you do, the PhD first and then do the veterinary degree. There isn't as much overlap as there may be in other programs. And I think that was helpful too. It felt pretty doable, but I did do like 1 year of vet school and 3 years of a PhD, then the last 3 years of vet school. So really it was a lot of stamina. It took a long time.
Yeah, I ended up with an extra year and it was worth it to be able to focus on both.
Yeah.
This is so cool. What has been your best day ever as a vet so far?
I've had a lot of really good days. And I can think of like a handful, and most of them involve going out to a farm, helping solve a problem, and a lot of them involve having students externing with me that I can go through and show, what is what and how things are done. So I don't have this like one particular day that I can go back to, but I can say all of the better days I've had, I can think of being, in a chicken house or in a turkey house. And those are usually my favorites. Although I do really also enjoy a lot of the DEI work and going out to conferences and talking to people about diversity.
It's just the best job ever.
Yes.
Well, you work pretty hard, as evidenced by everything you've accomplished. And you have to, I'm not sure that you sleep with everything that you're doing. When you do take a break, because self-care is important, what do you do for fun?
So I'm very much an extrovert, so having time with friends is important to me. But I also sleep quite a bit. I make sure to get my 8 to 9 hours every night because I can't survive without it. If I need some self-care, usually a bath, or I'll go get a massage. I'll try to get one of those every month or every other month. And I also really like doing outdoorsy things. So Seth and I will go with our pets. We'll go out on hikes and we'll do bike rides. And I'm really, really thankful to live in Cary, North Carolina, where there are just greenways everywhere and parks everywhere and sidewalks and bubble tea. So yeah, I eat, I hike, I bike so I can eat, and I drink a lot of wine.
What pets do you have now?
Oh, we have 5 pets. So our oldest is Han Solo, and he was actually one of my research cats at the Cornell University. So he was a SPF, specific pathogen free cat, and he and his brother Chewbacca were my research kitties. They had different names back then, but they came down from New York to Georgia with me. And then we got Anakin Skywalker, and he is a little black terrier mutt of sorts, about 20 pounds and a lot of sass.
I see a theme.
Yeah. So Chewie unfortunately passed away, and we got Aria, and she is a little Siamese mix thing, pure evil, but really soft and sometimes cuddly and sometimes just not. We got our second little terrier, Finn, also, and he's about the same size as Anakin, but completely different. He is what we call our little bag of insecurities. He is a hot mess. We love him so much, and I feel like we joke that he was supposed to be Anakin's emotional support animal, but the reality is Anakin is his emotional support animal, and we are his emotional support humans, because he's got a lot of help things. I joke he takes almost as many pills as I do. So we'll leave it at that. And then we recently acquired Goose. And Goose is an orange cat. Last year we watched all of the Marvel films in like chronological order of when they happen in the Marvel universe. And so one of the first movies we watched, of course, was Captain Marvel, and there is an orange sort of cat thing named Goose. And so I started saying that we needed a little orange cat named Goose, and Seth said no, and I said we did, and within a few months we got a cat. So it was great. Goose goes by a lot of names. All of our animals have a lot of names, but Goose especially. So he is Gustav and Gustavo, Guston, he is Gusius Malfoy. Oh gosh, he has a lot of names, but the reality is he is just very active and very social, and the other 4 animals don't always love that. And so he's the naughty little brother. And that's what we've got. We've got a lot of pet hair everywhere.
This is excellent. Oh, this has been such a good podcast. Is there a story behind your superhero name?
So, no and yes. So I've always loved Valkyries, and they are these female like figures and warriors that went into battlefields and guided, the souls of the dead, and they're just strong women who, in a lot of history, you don't see that. And so I've always identified with them at a certain level, but never really thought much about it until we watched the Thor series. And I know.
I love it. I'm Marvel too.
Yep. So in Thor, as many of you may know, there is a Valkyrie, and the actress looks like me. Not like looks like me in terms of her face is exactly like mine, right? But her skin tone is similar to mine, and her demeanor. The funny thing is, my first name is Valerie, and my middle name is Christina. So they actually do spell Valkyrie, which I didn't realize until I think Seth might have pointed it out to me. And so I decided that seemed like an appropriate name to me. So there isn't like this is this wonderful thing I did. I just felt identified by it. It's like me joking. So my initials are it's VM, right? Valerie Marcano. So I always joke that, when I'm Dr. Valerie Marcano, I'm DVM. And now that's DVM PhD, but that's a different story, right? So it just, some of these things just feel right, I guess.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So before we close out, what inspirational message do you have for our aspiring veterinarians who are listening?
Be yourself. I find that I am at my best when I get to be myself. And that means boundaries. So that means I need to go to bed, so I'm going to go to bed now. That means, yes, this needs to get done and it's important, but it doesn't need to get done right now. And I can take time for myself. It means being able to love both, poultry, VetMed, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and finding ways to meet both of those needs. So just continue to be yourself, continue to grow. So being yourself doesn't mean you can't change. I've changed so much. I've grown so much. And find your place. I think we are in veterinary medicine in a slightly awkward moment in which we have a lot of different generations in the workforce that all have different wants and different needs. And the time of overworking, underpaying is not going to continue. So if you don't feel comfortable where you are, find a place where you can feel comfortable and continue to be yourself.
Outstanding advice that I need to listen to. I can see myself playing back this part of the podcast over and over. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, again, just thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
You can learn about other League of Vetahuman superheroes at vetahumans.org. If you liked this episode, and I know that you did, please subscribe, rate, and share it with your friends. And remember, use your powers for good.